There's no more dangerous health factor than being overweight.
The nurse practitioner said, "You have Hashimoto's." And I was like, "No, don't put a label on me." Well, I went from a waistline of 48 pants and I barely fit into them to now 38.
Being overweight and trying to lose it and keep it off. I knew all of that, and nobody would ever lose an ounce. In fact, the average client of the clinic had gained 14 pounds. What would you want people to walk away with from today?
I'm going to really recommend.
And welcome to Weight Loss and Abs. I'm here with my good friend, Dr. Chris Mosier. How you doing, Chris?
Well, I'm doing great. I'm doing great.
So I get the good fortune of hearing your updates on this massive body transformation you've been through the last year or so. What's the update? How's everything coming along?
Well, this morning I weighed 246, but what was really cool, our tax lady said we needed to spend money. So we went to Walmart and we got me some new pants. One said, "You look awful in your old pants," because I was trying to use them as much as possible. So I was still wearing 48s and I would zip, it's almost like zip tying my belt together. And so I just went in and said, I probably can't fit in 38s. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I'll probably have to get 40s, the waist, and 38s fit perfect. I probably could have squeezed into the 36s. So I went from a waistline of 48, pants, and I barely fit into them to now 38s. And so, yeah, my life has radically changed, and it's more than just the weight loss. It's a mental aspect as well, but yeah.
So I was going to say you should burn the bridges and get rid of all the old clothes, but have you ever seen the before and after where somebody's holding up their old pants? You'll have to take some of those pictures.
Yeah, we're going to have to take some of those pictures. Then we'll get rid of them.
That's right. Yeah, you got it. Like I said, burn the bridges, make it so that you are not allowed to buy new clothes that are bigger anymore.
Absolutely.
So, I've been doing this a long time. I was actually, I don't think I ever told you this, but I was a weight loss counselor. When I was getting my nutrition degree, they made you work in a weight loss clinic. So they kind of got this free labor out of their students. And when I was there, I was an athlete. I was a wrestler trying to make the Olympic team. So I really didn't understand people's issues with their weight. Like my parents dealt with their weight all their short lives. And so I understood the challenge of being overweight and trying to lose it and keep it off. I knew all of that. But I figured, well, we've got this program in this weight loss clinic. People are coming in, paying good money, meeting with me a couple times a week. Well, we just put them on this formula, so you want to lose this much weight. Here's what you can eat. We'd hand them all the recipes, meal plans, everything else. And nobody would ever lose an ounce. In fact, I looked at the records of the clinic. The average, and this is crazy, the average client of the clinic had gained 14 pounds in a weight loss.
That's an epic fail.
Yeah. So it just further solidified how challenging this is, and really led to, now I've, written all kinds of books on it and counseled thousands of people, but that was my first really massive impression of the challenge of weight loss, is that here you came and you paid a lot of money, met with a counselor, got a personalized program just for you, that really wasn't that hard to follow. It wasn't like severe deprivation, and the average person gained 14 pounds. And some of these people had diabetes, heart disease, like they were there or they're going to die, and they still gained 14 pounds. So always there's that. I always like to start this off with this mental hurdle you've overcome, because a lot of people start weight loss programs with full intention of finishing them and staying on them. People need to do it in so many cases. They have diseases, conditions that are highly dependent on that weight staying off. And yet, even when it's life or death, they can't do it. So kind of help us out here. You've made obviously huge, not just transformation in pants, but there's been this mental shift that's taken place where, this has become truly a new lifestyle, from diet to exercise and everything else you're doing.
Absolutely. Well, I was thinking about yesterday, when I was getting these pants, and, you think about somebody that's really successful in their endeavors, in their business or whatever, and they have the mindset, if they're a self-made millionaire, let's just use that for example, that if they lost everything, they know that they could get it back, because they know what to do. And I thought, if I gained all of my weight back, heaven forbid, whatever, I know I would lose it back, because there's such a mental shift. We all know that losing weight is the easiest and hardest thing to possibly do. And what I mean by easiest is, if I had on my table here, I had McDonald's or donuts or something, is sugary, right? And then I had a really well-made salad, cut up steak, spinach, avocado in it, just really good. Now I'm making you hungry just thinking about, what I eat.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, anybody listening to this, even if you're struggling with weight, you would pick the salad because, yeah, that's so good. The salad takes time. It takes preparation. And so that's really, we all want to eat healthy. It's just, we get stressed, we get busy, and we want to go for that quick fix. And so, yeah, there's a huge mental aspect, but there's the biomarkers that we want to get into with testosterone. That's changed my life.
Yeah, and part of this show today, we wanted to really get into the changes that happen physiologically in your body, like what actually occurs when you lose weight. And, for people that are just hearing us for the first time, it's not that you just lost weight. Like, you've become a fitness-minded person. Like, you train, my comment when I watch your training videos is that we need to call the Indianapolis Colts. I think we need to get a tryout here, because the kind of training you're doing is intense, where when I first met you, anything outside of like basketball or long walks really wasn't on your radar to any great extent. I mean, you lifted heavy weights and you would do some of that, but getting into the kind of shape you're in now, it's radically different. And again, that takes a quantum leap in not just the workouts, obviously, but in a certain mindset. People, and this is why it's so great. We make such a great pair. People look at me and go, "Oh, you're a workout guy, so of course you work out hard." Or, "Hey, you're just one of those nutrition guys that like to eat healthy food." But what if you could become that? What if anybody could become that? And you've kind of proven that anybody can become that. You can become somebody that likes to eat healthy. You can become somebody who actually loves to get in great shape. Anybody can become that. And I think that's the hope of this show, is that transformation, that transition into being a healthy person can happen. There's these identities we walk around with where people say, I'm not a workout person. I'm not a healthy food person. And that just isn't true. That's a bad label. It's a bad identity. It can be changed.
Well, you think about just how, I believe it's in the book of James in the Bible, where, slow to anger, slow to speak, and things like, what I'm talking about. Well, you think about this, you have one mouth but two ears. So every time you say, I'm fat, I'm ugly, whatever, you hear it twice as much. So if you continue to say, I'll never lose weight, or I can't do this, or I can't do that, or I'm not a fitness person, you hear that. And then you start to actually believe, because there's wiring in the brain, which obviously far more than I do, but that's something I've overcome just personally.
Yeah, and Bibles are a great example too, because it's a change in identity that occurs quite often when they change their name. So you change your label, change your identity, change your name. So you take like Simon, which means weed, so just not very stable, not very accountable, swaying in the wind. They changed Simon to Peter, which is Petros, or rock. So he went from a very breakable, bendable weed to the rock you can stand on. That's a change in identity, a change in label. You had Jacob, which means deceiver or heel grabber. He turns him into Israel, which is the father of the nation. That's a transition in identity and who they, what they were about. And so, we want to make that same change here for the people that are watching. So let's get into the biomarkers for a minute then, just because it's not just that it's changed the scales for you or got you into smaller shirts. I told you, by the way, I'm saving all my larges. As I've aged, I've moved from large to medium. So I'm going to keep my larges for you. I know you're on your way to larges.
Absolutely. Well, we need to make a trip to Disney. It's getting cold here, so we're on our way. We'll just stop by. We'll pick them up and
Absolutely, yes, yes. I got them in a box for you. I don't think the pants, those are 30s. So that may not be, and they're 32. I'm kind of short, so you're those are never gonna, maybe for your children. But the
Yes.
I have shopped in the kids section before. It's cheaper and more my size. So talking biomarkers here. So when we looked at your blood at 100 pounds heavier, there were diagnosable diseases. I mean, there was a big concern. I mean, I normally don't get overly worried about blood work because I see it. I see there's a problem. We put people on a protocol and we improve it, get them healthier, change their blood to healthy. But in your case, it was so extreme. We were calling out some experts and some people to help us along to try to deal with. You had a TPO, so you had what's considered Hashimoto's disease, where your body's attacking your own thyroid. That was off the chart. And then given the fact that that interacts so strongly with the adrenal system, which makes your hormones, the testosterone was really low. So of course there's all kinds of overreaction that somebody can make, which is we're going to start putting you on steroids for your Hashimoto's, start injecting you with testosterone to try to get testosterone levels up. And all that's really aggressive, especially because you're a young guy. That's really, in your early 30s is a really too early to start doing that kind of work, and likely was not going to pay off well in the future. But instead, again, we adopted this new lifestyle, and you saw a radical change in the blood.
Oh, yeah. September last year, 2024, I went over to a local nurse practitioner, and they do some blood work, and they do this thing called pellets, testosterone pellets. And Dr. Ben, you can probably explain a little bit more of that. But like, I was just like, I'm heavy. I need to do something. I know testosterone will help me with my weight loss or metabolism. So let's just see where I'm at. And so the range you should be as a male, if I'm correct, is, 600 plus, like 6, 7, 800, 900, maybe 1100 would be the optimal, right? So I was cranking at 140 at a testosterone. So I guess I was like a really big girl.
Yeah, that was it. You had healthy girls testosterone.
Yes. And so it was really bad. And I try to think back of that time. And that's why I said earlier on this, I like who I have become, right? Because I'm a better father. I'm a better dad. I'm more patient. And so you think about testosterone. When I had that such low testosterone, I was short fused. I would be frustrated. And I have 4 young boys, and being frustrated with your kids that's just dumb. It's not good. If you're going to be the leader as a husband, as a father, being short fused like that doesn't make any sense. But that's where I was at. So she told me that I also have Hashimoto's, and Dr. Ben, I didn't even know what TPO was, anything really about thyroid.
Yeah, and
My
that number is
focus
supposed to be
month.
0. Like TPO is supposed to be 0. And where was yours at?
Mine at the time was 4,800. So you told me, yeah. So my high, in your clinic, you said 500, 600 is the highest you ever see. And I thought,
Not seen. Yeah, we don't see that. That I have seen that.
so the nurse practitioner said, you have Hashimoto's. And I was like, no, I don't want a label. Don't put a label on me. And she wanted to put me on a medication. And I thought, let me try this. So I tried for 6 months. I wasn't the best at this, but carnivore, keto, just cleaning things up. Went in, got tested, went from 4,800 to 2,900 on the TPO. And my testosterone went from 140 to 404. Now, this was a radical shift for me because mentally.
And just real quick too.
Go ahead.
When you slip under 4, that's when it's not just performance issues and body type issues and things like that. You're actually in danger as a male going under 400. You just don't have enough testosterone for some critical body functions. So just that alone, that first jump you made in testosterone not only gave you the benefits of that, but pulled you out of a health crisis as well.
Absolutely. Well, so after the midway test, I thought if I can kind of clean up my diet and make these changes, and I make these radical shifts in my biochemistry, what if I go extreme? What if I start incorporating fasting? What if I incorporating laying out in the sun a little bit? What if I incorporate ice baths? So that's what I did. And I went even more extreme, cutting out gluten and dairy. And I've discovered that once I cut those out, my weight just plummets. It just drops because those were, for me, inflammatory, right? And so I cut those out. So then here recently, I got my blood work. My TPO went down from 29 down to 2,600. So still extremely high. And we're working through some things on that. But my testosterone in just 3 months went from 404 to 637. And as I started doing the ice bath, Ellen goes to me, my wife, and she's like, Chris, your back hair is thicker and darker. And I had to look up. I was like, what does that mean? Oh, it's just my testosterone is going through the roof. So,
Yeah. That's a positive side effect, but it's a good sign that that testosterone is coming up.
well, it helps in the winter, but I wanted to make this point. See, we're up here in Indiana.
Yeah.
But
I was going to ask you where you found the sun to lay in.
we get some in the summer, but I was thinking about, in Jesus, where those 4 guys, they had their paralyzed friend and they broke in the roof and they dropped in his friend, right? Because those friends wanted to get him to Jesus, right? To be healed. They were willing to do whatever it took. And I mentioned this to you through text, but you are one of my mat carriers. So because of my age, you said, don't do the pellets. Let's try lifestyle. And I didn't believe I could do it at all. And maybe some people that are watching this don't believe that they can actually take their testosterone from a horrible, debilitating place to something that's actually viable and functional. But you said, no, you're young, you can do it. So I went through this because I was utilizing your belief in me.
Yeah, and by the way, that's a great story from the Bible. I always wondered, the people who let the small group come to their house probably weren't counting on a hole in the roof that night. That would be kind of a bummer, but a great miracle, and great friends who carried that mat as well. But also probably went to prison for breaking through somebody's roof. So we look at a lot of biomarkers, like I've told you, and most people it's back to the whole weight. That's why I thought this was a great show. You got the weight loss issue and you've got the biomarker issue, right? So weight's too high, and what people have to come to contention with is that your health issues go with it. There's no more dangerous health factor than being overweight. I was looking up, for example, with breast cancer, and they've got, they look at these genes, and if you've got certain, like the BRCA1 gene, for example, they're going to recommend, radical mastectomy and all of this. But yet the chance of the gene giving you cancer is just over 50% of what actually gives you cancer, which is being overweight. You got a 60% versus a 36% chance. So if you're overweight, there's a 60% chance of breast cancer, 6% increase in risk. With the gene, it's 36%. So it's much worse to be overweight than have the gene. And so that lifestyle change not only is about smaller pants, but you get this radical change in biomarkers that mean everything to your health. I always encourage everybody to get your blood test taken a couple times a year from somebody like us that's going to do more of a functional medicine evaluation. We look at a much wider range of biomarkers, like TPO is one that most medical doctors don't even take. So they wouldn't even know you have Hashimoto's because they would have only looked at your TSH. So, looking at a much wider range of biomarkers, but then rather than running to medication and feeling like you're stuck, like I said to you, listen, in early 30s, you can fix this. We can change your lifestyle. You can fix it. Now, you're 55, 60, and now you're no longer producing hormones because you've let your body kind of tank over many years. We're probably doing pellet therapy.
Well, let me ask you this. So now that I've increased my testosterone at this age, so I'm actually 36, so I'm upper 30s.
Okay. Wow. Yeah,
I'm so old now. But now that I've done that and I maintain this, how much easier will it be to maintain when I'm, old and senile, like your age?
Yeah, I'm up or something. It's really rough. If you've let yourself go in the hole for decades, it's a much rougher trip out of the hole. And so, everybody's got hope. I mean, everybody with the right lifestyle choices to make the kind of mental shift you have and the kind of lifestyle transformation you've been through, that's going to work at every age. But ideally, you don't let yourself get there. And for people who we hear all the time, like a lot of the reason I'm still passionate about doing a show like this and out there speaking and writing books is my dad died younger than I am right now. And he didn't make the shift. He would lose weight, gain it all back, lose weight, gain it all back. And, was a very heavy guy, didn't take very good care of himself. And the thought was, there's time. You think, well, there's time to get this under control. There's medication that'll get it under control. And so he ran out of time and was on the medications, and it didn't work, and he died young. And so this is something to, get your blood work done, listen to the show, make transformations like Dr. Chris has made. I think, we like to make sure there's a takeaway from the call today, Dr. Chris. So, you already gave a little bit of information on some lifestyle changes people might be able to make. What would you want people to walk away with from today?
I'm going to really recommend the ice bath. I know it sounds ridiculous, and I've even been telling patients about ice bath, and they look at me funny and they think, oh, that's crazy. But you think about our body has inflammation, right? And when you get into an ice bath, you decrease your inflammation, but then there's a level of endorphins and serotonin, and I can't explain it, but I get in and I'm freezing and it like kind of burns. It's so cold, right? But when I get out, there's a euphoric feeling. I would really, if you are serious about changing your life and changing your health, I would get into ice baths. And so there's different ways you can do it, but really just cold water in your bathtub, take ice out of your freezer, throw it in there, jump in. I mean, that's the simplest. You can spend a lot of money on an ice bath machine and things like that, and that's fine. I did, but that's because it's part of my life now. But to get started, that's what I would do.
Awesome. And well, congratulations again on the getting in the 30s with those pants from Walmart. When you come to Disney, too, we're going to have to take you to, I know Indiana, you don't have many choice. We're going to go to maybe Lululemon or Macy's or something, Nordstrom's Rack, something like that for you. I'll get you some 38s in a nicer pair of pants.
I'll be in 34s by then.
All right. Well, bless you, everybody. Appreciate you watching and listening. Remember who you are.